Hello friends, it's Nikki and welcome back to my messy bookshelf. So I am sitting here with another very large stack of books, and I am here to share numbers 26 through 50 of my list for my 50 before 50 reading list. As with the last video, most of these are classics, though I do have a few other genres sprinkled in. I think I have a nonfiction in here and sci-fi, fantasy, etc., but mostly classics. And I think I forgot to mention in the part one of this that if I start now, I only have to read 7 of these books every year. Only 7 of these books. However, I think we established the fact that I have a very large number of chunkers, some chunkers. So what I am proposing to do is to make a little rule for myself. So I intend to, and actually this is kind of helpful because I had trouble narrowing my list down. So I am going to have a list of 10 bonus books in case I am reading one of these books and one of them just I really cannot finish the book. I will allow myself one of the 10 bonus books, and I think I will share the 10 bonus books in another video because yeah, I have 25 books here, so we're going to move along. Let's move along. All right, so starting off, I have another Russian classic, another Dostoevsky, and I have The Idiot, which is one that I have also been wanting to read. I really seem to enjoy these depressing Russian classics. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I would like to get to The Idiot, and I'm actually pleased because the translation is by Richard Pevier and Larissa Volokonsky, and it says that they are award-winning translators of War and Peace and The Brothers Karamazov. So a good translation can make all the difference. So I have here The Idiot, and I will stop talking about it. One that I do not have that is going to be a reread is Crime and Punishment. I also want to get to Crime and Punishment again by Dostoevsky. And I read that several years ago. I think I read it before my daughter was born, so that was more than 10 years ago. And yeah, that was a buddy read that I did with my cousin after he got out of rehab. And it was a very fun experience. I think that was the first time I did a buddy read as an adult, so that was very fun. Moving on. So I have The Idiot and I have Crime and Punishment, which is a reread. I would like to try my hand at westerns. So I have 2 westerns on my list, and you can probably guess what they are because they are both booktube darlings. And I have here News of the World, which I have heard so much about, and I picked this one up in the hope that maybe I can read it for June on the Range and work up the courage to get to the other booktube darling, which I do not have a copy of yet, but I would also like to get to Lonesome Dove. So, Lonesome Dove and News of the World. I'm actually really excited for this one because it does sound pretty fascinating. Lonesome Dove is so many people's favorite, but when I read the blurb, I didn't see what there was that I am going to enjoy, but there are many people that I trust, many people whose opinions on books I trust that say it's an amazing book. So I would like to get to Lonesome Dove. All right, the rest are all books that I have copies of. So I have here The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Notre Dame. You know what I mean. So, Hunchback of Notre Dame. I cannot say this. And this is one I've wanted to get to for many years, but have not read Victor Hugo before, so I'm a little apprehensive because I've heard some people say that his writing is a little dry, but I mean, it's the Hunchback, so hopefully it's super entertaining and fun, and I can get through this because it's a bit of a chunker. It is. So we have that one. And then we have one that is not a chunker. So yay for me. I have The Trial by Franz Kafka. And I purchased this recently. It seems very fascinating. And I found it on the banned books table at my local bookstore. And I have been enjoying reading books off of that table. They keep adding new books to it. So, The Trial. Sounds very fascinating. I think I bought it while I was reading The Count of Monte Cristo, which made it doubly interesting. All right, finally, I have a Shakespeare, Hamlet. I have some Shakespeare on my bonus list, but I realized I didn't have any Shakespeare in my main 50 titles list. So I bumped another book and I added Hamlet because this is one I have not read. I really haven't read any Shakespeare since, well, high school and maybe my first semester of college after high school before I dropped out of college. So, yeah, Hamlet, one I have not read, and, I know it's one of his most famous works. The next one is a reread, and this is Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray, and I remember loving this book. I have wanted to return to it, but because of the length, I have been apprehensive of, starting such a long book over again. So I would like to reread this book because this was many years ago that I read this. And it's funny because I don't remember. There are two main women, young women in this book, and one of them, I can't even remember her name. She was kind of a quiet, meek figure. But the other one, Becky Sharp, I still remember that, and it's been over a decade since I read this, so I think that's pretty funny. Alrighty, moving on, I have one that I have been wanting to get to for a bit now, and I've added it to my pile of possibilities several times and never gotten to it. So, Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. And, scandalous book in its time, so I'm curious to see what this is about. Well, I know it's about a woman who is in a sort of loveless marriage. I think her husband is injured in the war, and she takes a lover. So, super scandalous, and I believe banned back in the day. All right, the next one I have here is a science fiction dystopian novel, and this is Red Rising. And there is a very funny story with this book. I bought this book new a year ago, 2 years ago, and with the intention of reading this book. And then my husband decided he wanted to read it, and I told him I had a copy of it on the shelf, and he took it with him when he was away for work and basically deployed. And then he passed it on to a friend, and then that friend passed it on to a friend, and he said, okay, I'll buy you another copy. And recently this book came home. This book came home and someone returned it to my husband, so it is now back on my shelf, but it is much the worse for wear, and I just found it so funny that this book has traveled around the world before I even got to read it. But Red Rising, I know he really enjoyed I think he made it to book 3, and he really enjoyed it. So the next one I have here is another classic, Pamela by Samuel Richardson. This one I'm particularly interested in now after having just read The Blue Stockings and meeting Samuel Richardson as a person. And I think it would be interesting to read this work. I think it's considered, or it was considered, quite scandalous because it shows a maid or a governess as the heroine, rebuffing a lord's or a nobleman's advances on herself. So I am very intrigued by this, and having just heard some of his books mentioned in the Blue Stockings, I am pretty intrigued, pretty intrigued. All right, the next one I have here is one I'm surprised that I have not read, and this is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I think everybody knows what that is about. Mad scientist. And we have here a historical fiction, a very chunky historical fiction, and this is The Source by James Michener. And this is one that I picked up many years ago. There is a theme here, isn't there? There is a theme. This is a book I picked up years ago after someone recommended to me, because I am a huge fan of Edward Rutherford, and I love those kinds of books that Edward Rutherford writes, where they take place over hundreds, even thousands of years in the same place with the same family. So it's kind of like a saga. Sometimes a couple of them from prehistoric times all the way into the modern day, following descendants upon descendants. And yeah, I was feeling sort of a bit hungover after finishing a bunch of his books, and they are all very long, by the way. And someone recommended James Michener. I cannot talk today. I'm so sorry. James A. Michener, and this one is in sort of the same style, taking place before monotheism in the place that would later become known as Jerusalem. So we're following people all the way back from before Judaism was a thing, and into the modern day. So should be something that fascinates me. But again, it is a chunker of a book, and it's been a while since I've read a historical fiction this long, and it's been sitting there for a very long time. So we are going to get to this one at the very least. I have 2 James Michener books on my shelf, and I have not read either one of them. All right, moving on, I have Agnes Gray by Anne Bronte. And I have read Emily, I have read Charlotte, I have not read Anne. So, Agnes Gray. I don't even really know what this one is about. I just know that I want to read all 3 sisters, so Agnes Gray. Alrighty, moving on, we have another sort of historical fiction slash fantasy, I guess. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I have started this one and set it to the side a couple of times, and not because I wasn't enjoying it, I just wasn't in the mood for it at that time. And yeah, it's been sitting on my shelf again. Broken record here. Been sitting on my shelf for years. So I actually might finally be getting to this one this month or next month, because my good friend Jessica from On a Stack of Books is reading this, or she is about to read this. So I may be able to hop on a buddy read to finally knock this one off my list. And this may be the first one on my list that I will get to. So, Song of Achilles. I loved Circe. I don't know why I haven't read this one. And then moving on, we have a nonfiction, The Travels of Marco Polo. I have gotten some way through this book, but it is a very long travel diary written by Marco Polo himself. So, fascinating. I love exploration and travel and people exploring new lands and things like that. So, fascinating to me, but I have never made it all the way through, and we're going to change that. So, Travels of Marco Polo. Moving on, some more things that are right up my alley. All 3 of these books in this Story for Seafarers collection are on my list. So we have 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I really enjoyed Journey to the Center of the Earth that I read last year. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this. The next one is one I have never heard of until I purchased this Stories for Seafarers set. And this is The Sea Lady by H.G. Wells. And I love H.G. Wells. I have loved everything that I've read by H.G. Wells. So The Sea Lady. Sounds like it's about a mermaid. And then, of course, Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. One I am surprised I have not read. And I have the children's abridged version, and I had planned on reading that with my daughter when she was into pirates, but we read other stuff. So, yeah, here we are. Here we are. I want to read Treasure Island. Alrighty, moving on, we have a sci-fi that I've been wanting to read for some time, Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Sounds like a very epic, interstellar, dystopian type of story. So that is entirely up my alley. So again, exploration, crazy circumstances, survival, those are my jam. Those are definitely my jam. So Children of Time, and I really hope this is book one. I have always assumed that this was book one, and silly me not looking it up before I made this video, or purchasing the book. But yes, Children of Time. I know this is a series, but why haven't I read it yet? I don't know. So here we are. And we are getting down to the end of this stack. We only have a few more. Next one is A Passage to India by E.M. Forster, and I think I made it almost to the end of A Room with a View by E.M. Forster, and I don't know why. I got annoyed and I just wasn't in the mood to finish it, and I did not finish it. But this one is about British India, East India Company era of India, and that is a topic that fascinates me. So, a tragic clash of cultures in British India after the turn of the century. So that sounds pretty dramatic and epic. So, yeah, we have this one. Again, it's been sitting there for quite some time. And then the next one is a reread, and we have here the original 1818 Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And I have read this before, but I don't think I read the original 1818 version. I know that it has been edited over time, and there are different versions out there, but yeah, Frankenstein. I think that it will be very enjoyable to revisit this. I will say I read this one and Dracula the same year, the first time I read both of them, and I love Dracula more, which is why I have reread it a few times, and I have never reread Frankenstein, so we're going to change that. And then we have a fantasy novel that has been sitting on my shelf since this book was published, which was when? 2018? Yeah. Children of Blood and Bone. I remember seeing this all over the internet when it was published, and I immediately ran out and grabbed it, and then I wasn't in the mood for fantasy. And it seems a little bit YA-ish, which is typically something that throws me off in fantasy, but I really want to get to this. I read the first few pages, and it actually seems like it's very interesting, and I like the writing so far, so we'll see. I just want to clear some of these large books off of my shelf before I unhaul them, and I don't want to have had them sitting there for so long and then just unhaul them. So yes, this is one that I really, out of all of the really thick fantasy novels that are sitting on my shelf that I haven't read, this is one of those ones that I just really want to get to. And I'm sorry, I'm rambling. This video is kind of long already. And then the next one I have here is another one I may get a chance to knock off the list this year. This is A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. And all I know about this one is that it is supposed to be really funny and ridiculous. And I think Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics said he wanted to do a group read of this sometime in the coming year. So I was like, that's perfect. That is perfect because it will help me knock this one off the list. So, yes. A silly, funny story. Yeah. All right. And then finally, I think this is the last one. I don't think I overlooked anything. We have another chunker. Let me move these out of the way so I can show you this one. All right, we have Kristin Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset. And this one is a medieval novel, or it is set in the medieval time period in the 14th century in Norway. So, a historical fiction written in 1920 about medieval Norway. Something I have never, and excuse me, my dog is coughing. Medieval Norway. I have never, ever read anything set in that time period. So, or in that time period there. So I am very intrigued by this. And this was on one of my lists from the books that I read about, like your classics books to check off your bucket list or whatever. And this was one of them. And I recently came across it like a few months ago at the bookstore and had no idea that it was one of the books that I had on my list. So pretty excited about that. I am very intrigued by this, and yeah, it's quite a lovely book, but it's a very thick book. Yeah, so another chunker. But you know what? Go hard or go home, right? So that is all that I have here. I have some other bonus books that are on my if I must swap one of them out, I have a list of about 10, maybe 12 books on my bonus list. So I will share those in another video because I've been rambling long enough and most of you are probably not even here anymore. So if you are, I thank you so much. I would love to hear if you have read any of these or hate any of these or love any of these. So let me know, and I thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.